Thanks everybody for joining us. We're gonna go ahead and get started. We are the Association for Experiential Education, AE. I'm Sherry Bagley, the Executive Director. It is a pleasure to have you all with us today. We appreciate that this situation and the COVID-19 pandemic is disrupting everybody's lives and making new challenges for everyone. And we are trying to help everybody get through this situation as best we can. If you have things that you need and AE can be of support, please let us know. We are happy to provide webinars or forums or chats, whatever we can do to be supportive. Check out our website at www.aee.org. There's lots of resources online, and all of our previous webinars and our webinars from previous years are available to anyone who needs them. Today, we are so excited to have Dr. Maurie with us. She is a longtime AE member and volunteer and a wonderful adventure therapist who has been working with her own company, Life Adventures, for many years. She's also the parent of these amazing kids on the screen right now and has some great information for us today of how to navigate through this crisis. Maurie, thank you so much, and we will get started.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm so excited to be here today, even in this odd time, in this odd way, for those of us that are just now technology and virtual ways of being together. When the call out for potential webinars came from AE, I immediately thought about how I've been navigating some of the parenting during this time, during this pandemic, this crisis. I never thought that as an adult, as a parent, I'd be saying, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate a pandemic while also making lunch, making sure they're all dressed, having 4 kids log on virtually to school, and all of those different roles that we juggle. I feel grateful that as a licensed mental health counselor and as a licensed marriage family therapist, I have some skills and some techniques that I've been taught that help me during this time. And I think in general, my personality makes it a little bit easier for me to navigate some of the crisis. And yet I'm still feeling emotionally and physically exhausted a lot of the time. So if you are not feeling overwhelmed or fatigued or randomly finding yourself crying or yelling, then you probably don't need anything on this webinar at all. Go take your time, do what you need to do. But for most of us, this stress of navigating this really uncertain and scary time is taking its toll. So today, what I have to offer is a little bit about some of the mental health background that could be helpful to understand what might be happening for you or for your kids, as well as some ideas and tips to try out with your own family to see if it helps lighten the load or at least normalizes some things for you as well. When I was reading this morning about just our shared experiences, there was a metaphor that said that everybody is in the same boat, but we're all experiencing a different storm. And for some people right now, it might just be sprinkling. For other people, it might be drizzling or raining a little bit harder. For some people, there might be thunder and lightning. Some people might be trying to navigate through a hurricane. And our boat is going to respond in different ways, and we're going to respond in different ways. So my invitation is to give yourself some self-compassion, to remind yourself that you do have these skills of resources and resiliency there. We've gone through difficult times before. One of my friends says that she has a 100% record of making it through a really bad day. And that this is truly a shared experience. And again, if your kids need to run around behind you or make noise, feel free to do that. Or maybe you need to color while you're watching this, or walk around, or maybe sit in a rocking chair, whatever it is that you need to do that helps you as we navigate forward. These are my 4 kids. They're a little bit younger in the picture. My oldest, Henry, is 7, and the triplets are now 5. It's Victoria, George, and Alexandra. So you may hear me talking a little bit about them. The whole show doesn't have just them, although it was fun looking through some pictures to figure out which ones I wanted to share. So all of us are experiencing trauma and crisis right now. All of us. I love this little cartoon, especially for us outdoor educators. You know, it's like life is like roasting this marshmallow. And I like to do it like nice and evenly. I thought that I had this all under wraps and control. I was working with my patients, and then all of a sudden my marshmallow's lit on fire. This is our life right now. We have this trauma and chronic stress that can be recurring. And what happens in our brain is that we have a stress response. And when we have a stress response, we turn back to our survival skills. And when that happens, our survival skills, which are there to help us to escape our perceived threats or our real threats, or to alleviate pain or distress, either that's caused or perceived, or when there's an inescapable threat, there is a threat that's out there. We're using some of these survival skills. Sometimes these skills come out as aggression or impulsivity or self-centeredness for us and for our children. You know, when something comes into our brain and we're navigating it, it's trying to figure out, are we at risk of something? Is there that saber-toothed tiger out there? Is there this virus out there that has a real threat? When we think about that, we go to that fight, flight, or freeze response. And when our brain goes to that fight, flight, or freeze response, it literally cuts off that part of our brain that allows us to go back to our library of previous experiences. When have I been under this kind of stress before? How have I responded like this before? It cuts off that critical thinking part of the brain of how can I problem solve? What do I need to do? And we act in what seems like really irrational places or ways. And the reality is that we're just in a stress response of fight, flight, or freeze. Most of us do not go around in the world trying out behaviors just because it doesn't make sense. At that moment in time, whatever we did made sense. Whatever we did made sense. Behaviors are motivated and behaviors are learned. And then there's a combination of both. One of the things that I've been trying to do more is figuring out either what are my kids really saying to me with these behaviors, or what am I really needing? What am I really saying when these behaviors are coming up, or when I'm saying something that's coming up? And taking that deep breath. And a lot of times right now, I have to remind myself to breathe out before I can breathe in. To breathe out before I can breathe in. Because we hold our breath when we're under stress. We're waiting for that next moment, that next piece that we're going to have to navigate or juggle. With our kids and with ourselves, we have tons of internal challenges that are occurring. Our emotional challenges, we're reactive, we're dysregulated. When we get dysregulated, that's when we start to yell or snap or throw things or slam doors or act in what we say is inappropriate or irrational. We're dysregulated. We have emotional reactivity. I would love to say that our emotions are this wonderful, magical thing, but they're not. They're just chemical responses to our thoughts and our behaviors. And our thoughts and our behaviors might have some anxiety behind them right now. Our thoughts, maybe we have some maladaptive thinking patterns. Maybe we're like, our kids are doing this just to make me mad, just to annoy me. If they knock on that door one more time, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? I find the why question just like totally unreasonable to ask kids especially, but really anybody. Because if you ask that why question, there's really no response other than defensiveness. It made sense at the time. It made sense at the time. And it's not really helping us to figure out what is that underlying piece. What is going on? Help me understand. Behavioral challenges, especially when we're under stress. We have poor impulse control. And my 5-year-olds don't have a lot of impulse control to begin with. You add on it a pandemic, and we have even less impulse control. I watch George, and he's trying, and his little fists are tight, and he's struggling, and he's struggling, and he's trying to find his words. And my goal is to try to interrupt him before it can flash. And sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. I also find that risk-taking behaviors are being increased during this time. And again, there are certain ages where we like to take more risks, that 2 to 3 age, that 5-year-old age, that somewhere around 11, 13, seems like most of childhood, 17, our risk-taking behaviors go up. Our brain does not fully develop until between the ages of 25 to 27. And the very last thing to develop is critical thinking. So if critical thinking, our ability to assess and take in information and figure out if information is accurate and figure out what have we done before and what might we do and what those potential consequences can be, if that's the very last thing to develop, and then under stress, we expect ourselves or our kids to figure that out, that's one of those things that's going to be interrupted. Not to mention that kids don't have as much experience as what we have. And even if we're looking back, because this is one of my favorite things, I'm like, wow, I remember being 7. I remember being 7 with my almost 50-year-old brain. That 7-year-old brain doesn't have the skill or the ability that I have with my almost 50-year-old brain. Really considering what is developmentally normal. Really considering that the potential is that they might lack skill sets or they might have physical limitations. Things that happen with our kids that they think that they can do something in their head and then physically they are not able to do it. What they see in their head, they see this huge Lego thing that they can build or Minecraft thing that they build, and then they try to do it and they're frustrated because it doesn't look like what's in their brain. We have limitations that don't match. And skill sets are not a one-time thing that we learn. We have to rehearse them over and over again, both as an adult and a parent, as well as our kids. With my 5-year-olds, first of all, if I ask them to behave, I might as well just be asking them to levitate, because what behave means to me and what behave means to triplets are completely different things. Aside from that, if I could get them started on something, I probably have to redirect 5-year-olds about every 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes, depending on what it is that we're doing. And this is at a time when they're not stressed. You have really little ones, 2 to 3-year-olds, you're redirecting every 3 to 5 minutes. You have under 2-year-olds or that 1.5-year-old, really what you're doing is just trying to keep them safe. There's not a lot of behavior. They are not doing something just because I told them they weren't supposed to touch this. A lot of what I'm trying to figure out when I'm working with my kids is, what do I need to help put them into place so that they can help them make good choices and good decisions? If I know that this is my 5-year-old's favorite candy and I leave it on the counter and then I expect them not to eat one, I'm really setting all of us up. Don't get me wrong, they definitely can do their planning. Victoria wanted cookies the other night. And she came and asked me, and she wanted cookies before dinner. And I said, no, we eat our healthy dinner first, and then maybe after dinner we could have cookies. And then I watch her leave, and she goes and talks to Henry, my 7-year-old, and says, hey, will you ask Mama for cookies? Because she's more likely to say yes to you. Which is technically true, because Henry doesn't usually ask me questions that I have to say no to. So as Henry is coming to ask me, and he's trying to say that the triplets have been really helpful, and George hasn't pushed anyone over all day yet, and they all made their beds without asking. I'm watching the triplets walk past through the other room, sneak around. Victoria asks George to carry the little step ladder over to the closet. Then she asks Alexander to climb up the step ladder to get to the cookies. And then the 3 of them walk through the kitchen eating cookies. I asked Victoria, hey, what is this? I said, no cookies before dinner. And she looks at me with those really big eyes and she said, but Alexander gave me one. So yes, behaviors are motivated, and I can't fault them for some serious problem solving there and some teamwork there. And at the same time, it is exhausting to try to navigate around all of that that's happening. There are some external challenges as well, especially right now. One of the biggest external challenges is that we're in limited space with limited social contact. I do like to refer to it as physical distancing versus social distancing, but even the most introverted human is still social. I score way, way over on that edge of introversion, and I find that I still like a text or a message at least once a day to have some contact with people outside of my home. As an introvert, it is hard to be isolating with 5 other people, 3 of whom want to climb on me all of the time. And yet that social contact is really important. For younger kids under 9 and under, they think that this is fantastic. They love being at home with their parents. They think that this is great fun. For kids older than that, they are seriously missing some social peer contact. I mean, think about it. At that middle school age and that high school age, peer influence is much more important than adult influence. And they're supposed to be separating their time. And yet we've stuck them with their family, try to say, hey, make the best of it. Do this, talk with me. Like, we don't typically talk with our teenagers all day long. And now we're trying to do homeschooling. Some of us are doing homeschooling. If you were doing homeschooling before all of this, most of us are doing crisis schooling. Most of us do not have the desire to do homeschooling. We do not have the training to do homeschooling. We do not have the setup to do homeschooling. Our teachers, for many of us, are helping us out and doing virtual meetings, but just trying to navigate that, especially if you have more than one kid on a different schedule and having all the Zoom calls going on at once, trying to figure that out, this is crisis schooling. And even if you were homeschooling before this, you had chances to do field trips and other social contact and team sports and play dates, and none of that is happening right now. And then we have some people's homes where the family conflict is high. We might have domestic violence or child abuse, and that space at home isn't safe. We might have limited space. If you see on one of these pictures, you see this guy that's trying to work on a computer and missed all of these toys. Some of us, many of us, don't have a separate office that we could work from, or we're trying to work and manage our families at the same time. Or our spaces and places just have limited functioning. We have like totally changed our living room around to activity sites that my kids can rotate through during the day, and I'm tripping over. And then external challenges might also be substance use. You know, there are lots of funny memes out there about giving your kids the little juice box and giving yourself the big wine box, and that airport rules are in place right now. You can have a drink at 9 a.m. or that you just don't have anything else to do. And for some of my clients who are sober, this is really difficult when they're trying to socialize and they see all of these different jokes that don't feel really funny, or reminders that that used to be a coping strategy and it isn't right now. Or people struggling because they're just trying to take that edge off because this is overwhelming and exhausting. So there's some common responses that we're seeing, again, from both ourselves as adults and from our kids. Those physical symptoms, if you notice that you might be having headaches or stomach aches, or kids might be having headaches or stomach aches, that probably is an anxiety response, especially if they didn't have them before. But even if they did, and it it might be escalated now or more noticed now. Those somatic symptoms are often our first cue that we're overstressed, that we're in a place that we're just being taxed too much. Reassurance seeking from my triplets, from young kids, so from kids under 7 or 8-year-olds will still sometimes do this too, but especially from kids under 7, they want that physical contact. They want to hold your hair and touch your face. Babies are like sticking their fingers in your mouth and your nose. My 5-year-olds are like climbing all over me. It is so much so that I have taped a little box on the floor with blue tape that when mama is standing in that box, that is a no touch zone. And I just need to breathe. Usually I have to breathe out before I breathe in, and breathe out and regulate myself for just a moment before they're ready to touch. And I can tell you that the 3 of them are sitting crisscross applesauce outside the tape waiting for me. And George has his little hands and he's shaking. And I feel that pressure of, I should be able to do this. I'm a trained person. I should be able to do this. And yet we are all feeling overwhelmed. That reassurance seeking can also come with the, Mama, do you love me? Dad, are you still here? Are you going away? I came into the office today and my kids were worried about 2 things. 1, that I was getting on an airplane and going somewhere. And 2, was the virus out there? Was the virus going to get me? So there's constant reassurance. And sometimes the reassurance isn't about anything obvious. I was woken up in the middle of the night because my 7-year-old has a hamster. Actually, I was woken up by the hamster. It was like this close from my face. I could feel the whiskers on my nose. It's pretty good that I didn't swing at and smush the hamster or send it flying across the room because I didn't know what it was. It's a little bit jarring to be woken up by a hamster in the middle of the night. And he just wanted to know that his hamster was okay because he could hear him running around. I reminded him that we've looked this up and we use Google Assistant and we know that hamsters are nocturnal, which means that they exercise at night while we are sleeping. A lot of reassurance seeking. Our adolescents do reassurance seeking in a different way, in an often much more annoying way. Middle schoolers or teenagers sometimes will get sarcastic or snippy. Oh, although my 5-year-old does that this morning. I was telling Sherry and Anna this morning that my kids were like, is it a school day? And I said, yep, it's a school day. And George says, it's a Monday? And Alexander says, well, this is not my Friday face. That's actually pretty unusual for a 5-year-old to say, but not really unusual for a 13-year-old to say. But some of that is that reassurance seeking. That, hey, are you still going to be there? Hey, are you still going to set this boundary? Hey, is this still true? That reassurance seeking sounds so different with that 15-year-old. I often think about that, that 2 to 5-year-old age and what they're doing then, that tantruming and how they're exploring the world is pretty similar to how they're going to be at like 12 to 15, just that they have a bigger space to do it in. Space. So for little kids, there might be too much space. You might find that you're carrying around very little kids, that 1 and 2 or 3-year-old, a lot more than you used to. They want to be right next to you. For adolescents, there's too little space. Again, they're used to being gone all day long, maybe having dinner together. We don't ask them questions during the day. Well, most of us don't ask them questions during the day. If we're bothering our adolescents while they're at school, that might be something else that we want to think about. But for the most part, we let them go and do their thing and then they come back. I was talking to some parents the other day, and they're like, but they're here and I'm a parent, so I should just be able to, I do knock on the door, but I should just be able to go in and ask them a question. They're used to a big gap of time without parent influence. They mostly manage to get from class to class. They sometimes manage to get their homework done. All of those things are going to be true. But for the adolescents, I'm finding that they are not getting enough space from their families. Moodiness and irritability, super common stress responses for us, for our kids. I said something snappy to my partner the other day. My partner said, I thought you were a therapist. And I was like, not yours. Would you like me to refer you? I know some people who do telehealth right now. We're all a little bit moody and irritable and challenged right now. Sometimes when this happens and we're under stress, we don't necessarily respond in the most helpful of ways. Often we respond in that reactive way. We take it personally. Really, my 5-year-olds are not personally trying to annoy me. They may be trying to get my attention. And what that typically means is that they need my attention, but they are not personally taking this out on me. Sometimes that reactive is use of force or fear or threats. Sometimes there's that holding response where we extend the negative consequence or the negative response and we just hold it. I'm still mad at you. At the end of the day, I'm still mad at you. Or convincing. I'm convinced that they did this for this reason. Or I'm convinced that I'm right and that they're wrong. That's that holding on and not being able to let go. Sometimes it's exaggerated and we give too many consequences, way too many consequences, or too big of a consequence. Or we're convinced of what we know the truth is. But remember, everybody's storm is different, even within our own family. The way that I'm experiencing the storm and my partner and my kids is all going to be different. And a lot of times under stress, our expectations are just too high. And it might be beyond our ability or beyond our kids' ability or just that perfectionism of it. You know, I watch on Facebook and I see like these people that are doing these cute snacks and they have celery and they put the peanut butter in it. And there's these little pretzel butterfly wings and raisin eyes. And I'm like, yeah, open the fridge. Anything that you can grab that doesn't fall on your head, you can have for snack. Great. That perfectionism can really undo us. And if you have the time to be creative with that snack, great. That's okay too. One thing that I found with the expectations that's been helpful is to try to measure like, what is that piece that's overwhelming me today? On Wednesdays, which are my long work days, Wednesdays are now finger food days. No plates, no utensils, no dishes to do at the end of the night. And we can be creative and fun with that. I also have been trying to be creative about that incessant mama, 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 I need you. And the kids created these little popsicle sticks and they put their name on it. This especially helps if you're working at home, but also if you're trying to manage more than one kid at a time while you're schooling. So while you're helping somebody, instead of them coming over, Mama, are you ready? Dad, are you ready? I have a question, I have a question. Or they're tapping you, or they're interrupting you. They put the popsicle stick next to you. You can see their name. And then we have a little station where they can go over and do some of their own work. For my kids, it's Legos. They can also go and read. It kind of depends on the age. And they wait there so you know exactly where to find them. And when you're done, you can take that popsicle stick because you won't forget. It is right there with their name. And you go right to where they are, where they're waiting for you. And it helps that interrupting kind of behavior, but it also helps to say, I didn't forget. You are important to me. I promise that I will come and talk to you as soon as I have a minute to do so. I haven't really resolved the interrupting bathroom one, so I have no tips or hints for you on that. You want to close the door, there's little fingers under my door on that. We all have our particular challenges. I think the way that I've let go of that is I've been practicing not being quite so modest and not being quite so surprised about all those super personal questions. What we want to try to do is activate resilience. For some of you, you might have seen this chart. Dr. Bobby Bila has used it when she's comparing resiliency to adventure education or adventure therapy, and how it can be so helpful. But I'm looking at these 4 quadrants, these areas that I'm trying to be able to focus on. First, control. We want to give our kids some choice, but we could give limited choices. I asked Victoria the other day, did she want eggs or cereal for breakfast? And she said lollipops. And I said, we don't eat lollipops. You can have eggs or you can have cereal. Which one would you like today? And she says, Mama, are you confused? No, I am not the one confused, little girl. You are the one confused. I didn't actually say that to her. I went back and took my deep breath, regulating myself. And I said, when you have your choice, let me know. And I walked away to help somebody else or do something else. Giving choice, small choices, when we can give choice is really helpful. Choice is also helpful when I might have a preference for something, but they might want some control or choice over it. So last night in their bath, they wanted to wear their socks into the bathtub. I think that this is the weirdest thing ever. I think wet socks feel uncomfortable. I have no idea why that would be a choice or a challenge for them. I wanted to say no because I don't want to deal with wet socks. When I paused for a moment, I thought, their clothes last night are going right into the washer. Who cares if the socks are wet before they go into the washer? So I gave them that little bit of control because for most of our kids, we're controlling a lot of their life. And that's some space where I could give them a little bit. Consistency and routine, I cannot overemphasize this part, this consistency, as much as possible. Consistency when we wake up in the morning, consistency when we go to bed, that bedtime, 20 minutes of routine. It doesn't even matter what the routine is, but doing the same thing for that last 20 minutes. If you brush your teeth and then change your clothes and then read a book, whatever that is, you want to consistently do that because it will help your brain to get ready for bed. That consistency helps us to feel in control. I can predict that when I get up in the morning, I go to the table, I can have my breakfast, I go and get dressed, I make my bed, and then we show up for our first lesson in the morning. It creates predictability, especially in these really uncertain times. Routine helps us, routine helps our kids. Safety is, of course, another thing that we want to try to control, and to be careful about some of the messages. We will keep ourselves as safe as possible, and we're not going to stop living. Things are still going to happen. Competency is one that we're always working on. This is our basic parenting strategy. We help our kids problem solve, we help them create social skills, and we co-regulate. So when our kids get dysregulated, we can help them to regulate together. And I'll chat a little bit more about that in a moment, about that regulation. Problem solving, we can figure this out. I heard Henry working with the triplets the other day. They were trying to do something, and he said, I don't know, what should we try? And they tried something and it didn't work, and I heard him say, that didn't work. What should we try now? And I love that we can make mistakes and we can test something out and we can still problem solve. Competency isn't about doing something right the first time. Although Victoria will tell you there's 2 ways to do something, the right way and again. And I'm really working with her about problem solving is testing something out, making a mistake, healing it or fixing it, trying something different. We will figure this out. Connection, one caring adult. The research shows us that one caring adult can make a significant difference. Caring and compassionate. I try to give my kids this, it's like they're vitamin C, but it's vitamin caring. 10 minutes of my undivided attention. Sometimes I play with them. Sometimes I just follow them around and kind of narrate what they're doing. I give them this dose of undivided attention. It's good in regular times, but it's super good now to protect us and mitigate from some of this stress. Peer groups are virtual peer groups, making sure that we're connecting. This is particularly helpful for older elementary school youth and middle school and adolescents. I was talking to a 15-year-old the other day, and he says, my whole life, I've eaten lunch with my friends. I've talked over things with lunch with my friends. It's really weird to eat with my parents right now. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, Maurie, we had a question about teenagers and how to help them through this time. Maybe some tips about how they can get that peer engagement without actually seeing them.
Yeah, so one of the things with the tip I was just going to get has to do with that. So teenagers especially have lunch with each other, with our peers. Let your teenagers virtually have lunch with their friends. Set that up, or have them set that up, that's what they're doing. They're eating their lunch while talking with their friends versus eating lunch with family. It is really hard for teenagers in this virtual peer connection. I encourage a little bit more lax about letting them talk, letting them chat, letting them connect virtually with their friends. Some places you can move around a little bit more. My worry about even some of the times where we can give physical distance is that, remember, that impulse control, that brain is not completely developed. It seems like a good idea at the time, but we cannot guarantee that their friends are safe. And so even driving over and trying to talk to somebody where you can see them physically may not be an option for adolescents. A lot of our adolescents play the online games, giving them a little extra space to do that. Really validating. This completely sucks for you. This is not how adolescence is supposed to be working for you right now. This is not fair. And I'm going to keep you safe. Because their brain is going to say, like, I'm okay. This is not going to happen to me. Kids don't get as sick as adults do, but you could bring it home. And I love you and our family. And I'm going to make the safe decision. And it's okay that you're mad at me. As much peer interaction as you can get, let them do. I try to offer some fun things to do. With littler kids, it's a little bit easier because you can do like a virtual Lego challenge, or virtual playtime. With really young kids, even that 5, 6, 7, you can just do a virtual time where they're just doing parallel play. With older kids, they're not like into that in the same way. So mostly I just let them talk and chat as much as they need to talk and chat. Contribution is that fourth category that's really helpful. Chores and tasks, certainly we have a routine one, but that's something else that the adolescent can be helpful with or can be interested in. What kinds of projects would be helpful for you? How do you want to contribute? What do you want to be doing? Doing something for the greater good. Adolescents really love projects where they can help other people out. So is there a way that you can get them involved in helping neighbors, dropping off food? Is there a way that you can get them to do some sort of bigger project, the greater good of the community around them? A lot of times they'll have ideas. Or if you can get adolescents to help teach other adults how to use Zoom or how to chat or how to do a video call, like, hey, are you willing to offer your services? If I let my friends know, can you teach somebody how to do Zoom? That might be something that engages them, but also is giving that contribution. It's making a difference. Thinking about how can we expand those opportunities. We want to try to come from this resiliency mindset. And mindsets are those assumptions and expectations that we have for ourselves and others that guide our behavior and our interaction. And when we're thinking about a resilient mindset, we have a commitment to purpose, our purpose in life, our value. We see challenge as an opportunity, that developmental, that learning, that growth mindset. And we control things within our own influence. We control things within our own influence. So I let go of the things that I am not able to control, and I focus on what I can influence. What we try to instill in both ourselves and our kids when we think about these beliefs of resilient minds, humor. Humor is great. Humor at all ages. The other day, I just made a side comment of like, oh, I need to spend some more time on this treadmill or reduce my stress. A couple hours later, I see one of my kids napping on the treadmill with a lollipop and a magazine and her little cuddly. And she says, Mama, this really works. You're right. Humor. I don't know that she thought it was humorous. I thought it was humorous. Being that problem solver, we talked a little bit about the importance of problem solving. We can figure this out. We can figure it out. Being aware of our strengths and what our gaps are. Here's what we can contribute. Here's where I need some support. If you look at that number 5, accepts help and support. Accept help and support in ways that are, of course, safe right now, but figuring out like, yeah, I would like to ask my friend to reach out to me once a day. Or maybe stretching it out like, hey, will you be my Monday check-in friend? Will you be my Tuesday check-in friend? It is okay and necessary to accept help and support. Learning from our mistakes, they're just that. It is okay to make mistakes, and that we're contributing to a positive difference in our family and in our world around us. When we're trying to build competency, so this goes for all ages, the thing that makes the most amount of difference is what we're modeling. What are we doing? Are we taking time to make mistakes, for forgiveness, for self-compassion? Are we modeling taking that breath? What are we modeling? Are we asking our kids to clean up their rooms and our room is a mess? And that we have to teach competency. We have to teach them what that looks like. Remember earlier when I said if I told my kids to behave, I might as well tell them to levitate? And then we have to rehearse it and reinforce any movement towards. Reinforce, especially with those adolescents. Like, hey, I checked in your room. There was no food in your room. Sometimes it's, there was no moldy food in your room. Reinforce any movement towards. When we're thinking about parenting, we are constantly thinking about what is it that we're teaching. If I yell at my kids, what am I teaching? I'm teaching them that yelling is okay, or I'm teaching that the person with more power can yell, or I'm teaching them that when you get frustrated, you don't solve problems anymore. What am I teaching? Is this the best way to teach that? What am I teaching right now? And is this the best way to teach it? With any age, the very first thing that we need to do is help our kids to regulate. Anything rhythmic and repetitive for 2 to 7 minutes. With adolescents, go for a walk. First of all, there's research that shows that a 20-minute walk a day produces the same amount of chemical in your brain as an antidepressant. So it's physically going to make you feel better. Walking is rhythmic and repetitive, so it reduces stress. Being outside reduces stress. Anything rhythmic and repetitive. Adolescents prefer to have conversations when we're side by side. That's why car rides work, walking works, not face to face. Younger kids like that face to face or that cuddling or sitting on your lap. Older kids like side to side. Getting them to do anything rhythmic and repetitive. Playing music that has a rhythmic and repetitive beat. Learning how to play the drums. You can do it with pencils, on a clipboard. It doesn't have to be super loud, but learning drum rhythms. Coloring is rhythmic and repetitive. Playing cards can be rhythmic and repetitive. It depends on which game you're playing. Anything rhythmic and repetitive. Watch what your kids do. They will probably are giving you hints on what's helpful. For George, who has a lot of externalizing behaviors, I usually have to do something big, helping him to do jumping jacks, getting him to hit a balloon up in the air over and over again. With the older kids, helping them learn how to juggle. First of all, juggling increases your frustration tolerance because you're learning how to do it. But once you learn how to do it, then it's rhythmic and repetitive. And then relate. It makes sense that you're upset because you can't see your friends right now, and you typically will see your friends every day. It makes sense that you're upset because I'm the one that's choosing all of the food in the menu. It doesn't mean that you think that they're right. Making sense is different. And then an emotional narration. I imagine that you might be feeling frustrated. I imagine that you might be feeling lonely. I wonder if you're feeling overwhelmed. Notice I don't give them the emotion. I give them space to respond. Only then can we reflect. I noticed in the past that this is what you did. I noticed that yesterday when you went outside, very first thing in the morning, your morning was a little bit easier for you. I noticed that When you alternate studying with outside time, that tends to help you a little bit through the day. Or reinforce and reflect our values. We help each other. We don't hit each other. We are compassionate towards each other. We have choices. Which choice are you going to make? And then redo or redirect. Give them the chance to make the right choice. I know that you're going to make the right choice right now. I'm going to walk away and let you do it. And walk away and let them do it. And then reinforce the heck out of it as soon as you see it. Wow, I noticed that you went over and you helped rebuild your brother's Lego. I noticed that you got back on task and finished all of your assignments today. When we're thinking about our resiliency plan, we want to talk to our kids about safety and making sure our basic needs are being met. And our basic needs are that physical, emotional needs. And we want to reduce our risk generating situations and give them as many resources as possible. When you're talking with your adolescents, so with younger kids, most of the time they're just going to ask you the questions that they want to know, especially about COVID-19. Answer the questions as age appropriate and developmentally appropriate as possible. And then say, and we wash our hands. And that's why we're only seeing people virtually instead of in person. And it's temporary. And as soon as I have more information, I'll let you know. With older kids, a great way to do this is like, hey, I saw this article, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about that? If they haven't seen the article, you can give a little more information, or you can give them the article. But older kids don't tend to ask questions in the same way, but they have questions. What else would you like to know about COVID-19 right now? What is something that you're worrying about or wondering about? Has it crossed your mind that some of our family members might not be safe? It is okay to talk about this, and it is okay to make spaces not to talk about it. That sanctuary, that planned respite, that calm space, that self-care and compassion. Teaching mindfulness is super helpful. There are kids' yoga classes. There are apps like Calm and Headspace that older kids might like to do better. Mindfulness will help us to get through this. Make some accommodations. Try to cue people like, hey, it's almost 9:30. I think your virtual call starts in about 5 minutes. Just wanted to let you know. I was like, oh, I know. I'm so glad that you know, and that you're patient that I remind you. Non-reactionary. Achievable goals. Give kids achievable goals. Making your bed at 5 might just mean that they've pulled the cover up and none of the cuddlies are on the floor. Whereas making your bed at 15 might be changing their bed once a week. Get support from your family, your peers, the bigger world, and also help your kids to get that kind of support too. Focus on skills, communication, problem solving, regulating, helping them being involved with that, and wellness, sleep, nutrition, play, and exercise. If you're going to take something off the schedule, take the dishes off the schedule and go for that walk. A fun activity to do with communication with the younger kids, that late elementary school kids, is have them write the directions on how to make a PB&J sandwich, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then you create the sandwich using the directions exactly. So if they haven't told you to use a spoon to get the jelly out, you could dip your hand in. They think it is hysterical, and you have that chance to talk about how communication can get misunderstood quickly. Routines, predictable blocks, alternating study and play. Limit the news if at all possible. Limit your news first thing in the morning. Limit your news before bed and only share it developmentally. Exercise, play as much as possible. Making plans. I think some of us have forgotten to do this. A future orientation is helpful, and have something fun to anticipate. Wednesday's pizza night day. Hey, Friday we're doing that bike ride that we wanted to do with the park that's still open. Making plans can be helpful. And being creative with building things, and being creative with being messy. Being messy is sometimes helpful and healing. Ultimately, we want to stay sane and we want to stay safe. But part of the way that we do that is we learn how to tolerate uncertainty, and sometimes messy is really okay. You can hose them off before you come inside. Managing your own anxiety will really help, because all kids, but especially those adolescents, feed off of your own energy. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the right option. Focusing on the here and now, staying home, wash your hands, or eating dinner can help you manage your own anxiety. Finally, just to recap, as we're building resiliency, validate disappointment, validate experience. If we say like, well, it could be worse, I'm like, yeah, it could be worse. We could be in Syria. Lots of things could be worse. When we do that, we really dismiss the disappointment or the anxiety or the fear. Their experience might be different than ours, likely different than ours. Validate. Practice mindfulness for yourself. Practice being calm. It will help mitigate the stress. Health. Focus on that nutrition, sleep, exercise. And if you eat ho-hos for breakfast, try to eat an apple for lunch. Do what you can. And those are the things that will really help. Be realistic. Sometimes that means we need to set boundaries on our adolescents or boundaries for ourselves. And a lot of times we need to practice that forgiveness, both for ourselves and for our kids that have crossed those boundaries. Socialize as much as you can with that peer connection, or creating similar situations. That's like creating that lunchtime. If you can figure out like, hey, this was the time that I really miss my friends, or this is what's happening and I really miss my friends, whatever you can do to mirror that. Get them to do dance challenges or other kinds of building challenges, or sharing in whatever possible way that you can share while still also being safe. I have seen families do some like Lego challenges where they build Legos, or older kids and they're building something out of wood and they leave it at the doorstep of the next family, who then disinfects it, adds to it, and drops it back off where it's then disinfected, adds to it, and you have like this growing sculpture that's happening between places. These are my kids, and the only way I could get them in the picture was to promise Alexandra that there would be a horse in it. If you are interested in hearing more about some of my parenting stories, my muddyboots.adventures.net is my blog. I also have a Facebook page with Muddy Boots Adventures, and I post a lot more there because I'll post some of the little stories. My counseling is lifeadventurescc.org. I also have a Facebook there, or page where I'll post research or articles or updates or groups that are happening or events. So both of those ways are great ways to contact me. My email was at the very beginning. They'll be sending out the PowerPoint, and there'll be a recording as well. I will accept any friend requests. So if you friend request me, my whole goal is that I don't unfriend somebody until they unfriend me. I try to find some place of commonality first. And I'm getting better. I did lose a lot of friends at first. I'm getting better at finding those places of commonality. And I really enjoy hearing the stories from other people. Sherry, I'm going to ask you if there are any questions that you wanted me to wrap up with.
Yeah, Maurie, we had a question about tips for helping with mental behavioral disorders like OCD. Are there tips to help keep things on an even keel, or do you have other thoughts about parents who are dealing with even more on their plates?
Yeah, so most mental health providers are providing telehealth, and I've done telehealth sessions with kids as young as 5. So get more help. Find someone that will do telehealth with you, even with the little ones. OCD is going to be really ramped up right now because it's soothing, because that is what's happening. So again, add that mindfulness in. If it's an adolescent, get them to do one of the apps like Calm or Headspace. Help them to prioritize and really reduce whatever those expectations are. Exercise and play is your biggest bet for mental health. Exercise and outside time will help with depression and anxiety more than anything else. So on that schedule, have that half an hour of outside time. If they don't want to play outside, let them sit outside on their phone. Outside, at least they're outside. If you can get them to play and do something, great, but do what you can and get some outside time in the afternoon. It's like you need this dose of vitamin D, just breathing outside. There are other sources. If you talk with your mental health providers, they can give you some other suggestions and places and support, but basically you want to increase the support. So if you're only going to a session once every other week, you might want twice a week. I know that we will work with, sometimes you can work with 2 counselors, so you can get 2 different sessions, and maybe one is working on skills and one is working on emotional regulation. So those kinds of things are possible. Interns often will work at a sliding scale, so if your insurance doesn't cover that, that makes it a little bit more accessible. Talk with your doctors. Talk with your doctors if they're having any of those physical symptoms. Sometimes medication needs to be changed or adjusted or offered to help them. But routine, exercise, sleep interruption, sleep disturbance is one of the primary causes for depression and anxiety. So if you can adjust for how they're sleeping to give them enough sleep, that's really helpful. A nap in the afternoon is helpful, but a nap is 30 minutes. So you have them lay down, give them about 10 minutes to fall asleep. You want that 20 to 25-minute nap, and you set that alarm for that like 45-minute mark. Your goal is that they're going to wake up 5 minutes before their alarm, and you can train yourself to do that if they need that. But those are some of the basic tips. If it comes down to only 2 things that you remember, exercise, outside. Those are the 2 things that are most helpful.
Maurie, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today and giving us all this great information as a parent. Also, I know it's been super helpful for me to learn a lot of this, but also to be reminded of a lot of it in this situation. So it's easy for us to forget some of these great things about resiliency and regulation and things like that. So much appreciated from me. You can find more webinars at ae.org. And again, if you all are needing something else, something in your program or just needing more information, check out our website. And also feel free to email me at Sherry, SHERRY at ae.org with questions or things you'd like more resources on. Really appreciate having everybody today. Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.